Sheri, we'll start with you. If you can help us here in Virginia understand what it means to be a Jersey girl. What does it mean to be from New Jersey, and what is it? What exactly should we think of when we think of a Jersey girl?
Okay, so first you have to tell you so that since we have different names, Prupis and Najer, we tend to be known as the Sheris. Close my door. We tend to be known as the Sheris.
Okay, that's helpful to know.
Okay, so I am a lifelong Jersey girl, born, bred, second generation. My kids are third generation Jersey.
Wow.
In fact, the license plate on my car says JRZ, GRL. Okay. So I have a reputation in the office that I go Jersey on people. Okay. So it is not that Virginians are less passionate or less motivated. They just do it in very subtle ways. So you don't realize what happens with this from a Southern lady until about a half hour later. With Jersey, it's in your face. You know.
Okay.
But Asher, on the other hand, he's our Israeli Texan.
Yes, that sounds good. And what has the transition been like for you, Sheri, going from New Jersey now to the South, to Virginia, to Richmond? What has that been like?
So some of it is a little bit funny, so that when I did my Easy Pass in Virginia, I got a call one day and a woman says to me, the address you put in your Easy Pass can't be right. It doesn't exist on the map. And I had made a mistake on the keyboard. I had typed the wrong letter. So I said, okay, I'll go. Thank you so much. I can't believe you called me. I really appreciate it. I'll go online. I'll make the fix. She goes, oh no, sweetheart. I fixed it and I dropped it in the mail. I just wanted you to know, in Jersey, if you made a mistake typing in your address for anything, you just would never get whatever it was that you ordered. Nobody would call you.
Right.
It's taken me a while to get used to how polite everybody is. And I feel very loud and domineering down here, where in Jersey, I was holding my own. So, but everybody's real nice. Even when our kids come visit, even the little ones, the 4-year-old and the 6-year-old, they always go, Mommy, Sasta, Saba. Everybody says hello.
Yeah. It is amazing. And as you know, we'll get to it. I also come from part of my life in New Jersey. So Asher, how many years did you live in Israel for?
Well, I was born in Israel. I lived there until I was 10 years old. And then we moved, the whole family moved to the States.
Not to the States. Where'd you move to?
We moved to Texas, Eretz, Texas.
Okay.
And my father and his brother, they were in business together. My father joined his brother in the grocery business. After a few years, things started drifting apart.
Okay.
Between the family, between the wives more than the family, more than the brothers. So my uncle sold the stores. My father tried to set up some business in Texas. It didn't go well. And then he had an opportunity to go to try to do something, reconstruct something in Israel. So we all moved back.
Wow.
So I was there as a teenager. I finished high school over there, and then I did my stint. And
so if you can tell some of our viewers what it's like to grow up in Israel and to live there. Most people have never been there.
Okay, so growing up in Israel, because I was the very first generation of truly born Israelis. They were born under the state of Israel. Israel was then a very primitive country. It was like the wild, wild west, where everything goes. There was no controls. The only controls we had was what values our parents bestilled upon us.
Wow.
So roads were being built, houses were being built. People back then, when they went to work, very very few people had automobiles. Some had trucks, but most people went to work with bicycles.
So you saw a country built from the ground up.
I saw a country. I was born in a country that was being built from the ground up.
Wow. And what was it like to serve in the military there, since everyone has to do that?
The military was extremely demanding, very harsh. They were very much no nonsense. It took a lot of both physical and mental endurance.
Do you have a favorite story, or is there a moment that you think of when you think back on your military career in the IDF? Is there anything that really comes to mind that kind of
Well, you see, there's certain things. It was a growing process. It's a maturing process. A favorite story. There's a lot of mini stories, but the favorite stories I like to tell is the one when they inducted me, and they basically gave me an option where I wanted to serve. So I told them I want to become a potato peeler. I want to serve in the kitchen.
Well, you know, that's
How'd that work?
Well, that didn't work too well. They told me that, yeah, you're going to be peeling, but what you're going to be peeling is not going to be potatoes.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Now, Sheri, you work in computers for the university system here in Virginia, right? So
yes, sort of.
Okay. Well,
I work in academia for the community college system.
Okay.
For the 23 community colleges. And we came here for that job. Osher's the trailing spouse.
Yeah.
He sort of woke up one morning and suddenly found out he was a Virginian.
Well, you helped make the education system here go round. So that's
so it's been very interesting with COVID-19. So in March, I had to bring up 100,000 faculty, 230,000 students at 23 community colleges and get them all online.
Wow.
I have a very dedicated team, and actually on my larger team is Chava Nyman.
Wow.
Okay. So with people like Chava, you can imagine it was definitely a success.
Okay, wow. So I'll just say that during the pandemic, that's such an important part for the Commonwealth to see that happening in an efficient way. Now, Asher, I know most people don't know this. You've been friends with my father. Both of you have been friends with my parents for a number of years. And Asher, I know you've done a lot of work. If you can kind of describe what you do as this jack of all trades. I know you've done work in my own house in West Orange, my parents' house, I should say. So what should people know about some of the work that you've done and how, how varied it is with all the different
what's really sort of fluid in me is the ability to think outside the box and be creative. So it's really creativity. It's not necessarily the tasking of the demands of the job in regards to right now I'm doing remodeling and construction. I do remodeling and construction with an artistic flair. It's I need to be able to do things without constraints. So when I have this freedom to build or redesign something, I do it not necessarily because people desire certain things a certain way. It's that when I am free to express myself, therefore I become much more artistic about it.
Well, I know.
You know what he's missing, what he's not telling you? He designs and builds what people really want, not necessarily what they have asked for, but what it is that they really, really want.
Well, I know it's fascinating that you're building the Aron Kodesh, this Holy Ark. I know that's an amazing project. But Sheri, I have to ask you, what is it like to live with somebody who has projects going all the time, and whether it's the basement or whether it's the other rooms? Or I know from my own refurbishing family members that can get interesting living with such a creative spirit.
So now that we bought on Jeffrey, we have really made this house our own. So it's actually been fabulous. So Asher built a wraparound porch in the front of the house.
Yeah.
We have an above ground koi pond in the backyard, an above ground fire pit, all custom made. He redid our kitchen. So now I have a dairy area and a meat area, and he's building a full bath in the den. The dust makes me crazy.
Right.
But it is the price for it. And now, so our front yard for a long time was awful. There was no grass because of all the work going on, and there was now we have a beautiful wraparound porch. Simchat Torah, it rained both days. We were outside on our porch because about 2/3 of it has a roof over it.
Retractable, right? Yeah.
No. It's a permanent roof
fixed.
over 2/3, and then the wraparound part doesn't have a roof. So on Friday night, we tend to sit on the side without the roof, and we look at the stars, and I'm beginning to identify planets, which Asher's very good at. Sometimes I identify an airplane, but I'm getting better.
Okay.
But when it rains, we can sit under the roof. It's really, really nice.
So it has its perks.
And I'm looking forward to having a den when the bathroom and the floors are all done. But remember, this is only because we've just moved into this house and we're making it our own. Most of the time when he's working in someone else's home.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so it sounds like it's nice to have that kind of in-house extra.
Oh yeah.
So your son Jonathan lives in Virginia. You have Beth Ann, right, Sheri, and she lives in
yes. So yeah,
New York.
Jonathan is here in Richmond, and he is a sous chef for the VCU hospital.
Okay.
My daughter Beth Ann is had been working at home, but actually lost her job in COVID because the company that she's was working for. She has 3 little girls and lives in Queens. And then we have our oldest, Rebecca. She is in Israel and Rehovot with her. She's a physical therapist. Her husband is an architect. They have 3 kids, Maya, Amit, and Ella. Beautiful. And then we have one more son who lives in West Orange, who's an accountant, West Orange, New Jersey.
Now, Beth Ann is a pretty Southern name, so that worked out pretty well.
Yeah, because she's Bat Yechana.
Okay.
Right. So this is true with all the kids, right? So Rebecca. Yeah. Yoel is the easiest because Yoel is Yoel.
Right.
Jonathan is Yehonatan, and Beth Ann is Bat Yechana. So they all have English Hebrew names that go together. But yes, it was one of her first comments, and she loves when people with real Richmond accents say her name because
there you go.
It suddenly goes from being 2 syllables of Beth Ann to kind of like 3 syllables. I can't even do it.
Yeah. So
and they love coming here. The kids, Beth Ann and the children. We hope to get Rebecca here with her family, but obviously that waits until it's safe to travel. But Beth Ann and the kids love coming down here. The girls love going to groups at the shul. They like the friends they've been making. Beth Ann and Michael have made friends down here. In fact, in the summer, at one point, because they live in a 3-bedroom walk-up with no backyard or anything.
New York City, right.
Yeah, so she called me up one day and said, we're going to our Virginia summer home for 6 weeks. We're isolating now. And I said, okay. And then I went, oh, wait, that's my house.
That's right. Yeah. Now, Michael is Bukharian, right? So
very, very interesting.
Maybe you can tell us what it's like to have an Ashkenazi family be combined with a Bukharian, what that was like.
So here's how Asher handles it. Asher says since Beth Ann married a Bukharian, Asher is permitted to eat kitniot on Pesach. Somehow he thinks the custom goes from the son-in-law up to the father-in-law.
Maybe we should back up, just explain what Bukharian means, what the...
So Bukhara is a place in Russia. It's all the way east near, it's in Uzbekistan. The main city is Tashkent. And the customs, they consider themselves Mizrahi. To us uninitiated Americans, they're Sephardi, but Mizrahi really is a bit different. Bukharians have their very own distinct customs, their own way of davening, their own cultural foods.
It must have been an interesting wedding, from what I understand.
It was a beautiful wedding. People really loved it.
How is it different? What are some customs that stand out for a Bukharian wedding?
What are
Well, I call their wedding like the wedding from Wizard of Oz. You have all these pomp and circumstance, people dressed, the chatan, the kala, the wedding party. They dress in these gowns.
Oh, the cut
and you know, these really beautiful gowns.
So the Khatan wore a white.
They're called kaftans.
Yeah, the Khatan wore a white kaftan embroidered in gold with what I call an Aladdin's cap, also embroidered in gold. It was gorgeous.
And then the music is really interesting. They bring in these music with from the Ricola cough drop commercial, where you have these long horns that drop all the way to the ground, and they're blowing the horns
and these huge drums
and drums as big as a house, and they're beating the drums back, back and forth, and it's really so lively. As opposed to the Ashkenaz wedding.
Be nice.
I'm going to be nice.
Sedate.
The Ashkenaz wedding, it's sedate like a funeral march.
in comparison, right? So it must have been fascinating to have that Bukharian son-in-law and that experience, and how they met and combining two different worlds. And
now, the other thing I have to add is the language of Bukharian. It's not a country; it's a nationalism. It's a nationality like Ashkenaz is to, and Yiddish is to the European Jews. Their language is a Persian version of Hebrew.
Tajik.
Very interesting.
So like Yiddish is a Germanic version of Hebrew.
And Ladino.
Ladino, whatever it may be. Theirs is Persian.
Tajik.
So the language is really interesting. So the first Pesach we had all together as a family, I had to learn Echad Miyodea in Tajik.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
And it was really, a lot of fun.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun learning how to sing Echad Miyodea in a different language.
Right. Now, I remember many years ago, I really first met your family through Beth Ann and NCSY, and also Jonathan as well. What was it like for your kids to be a part of NCSY? Was it something that they did regularly or just kind of sporadically? How did that kind of impact their Jewish development?
So it's kind of interesting, because you think that yeshiva kids wouldn't need a youth group, right? Because yeshiva kids are learning all the time. So knowing how to daven, knowing what Shabbat and Yom Tov are, they know it from the home, they know it from their day school. But kids see school as school, right? So there might be a subject that they enjoy, but it's not until they become an adult that they appreciate their Jewish education. So groups like NCSY or summer camp and programs like that, I think are really important, because that's what gives them the joy in Judaism. Because, they could sit Friday night and sing with their parents or learn in school, or they could spend Friday night with their friends in deep theological conversations, which I always found fascinating,
Yeah.
and then switch into singing. And then the advisors don't play the role of a strict teacher. They're more of a guide. They're more of a Rebbe. They're
Mhm.
more of a guide,
Mhm.
and really help bring the kids to a love of Yiddishkeit. So I'm very excited and glad that my kids had that opportunity.
I totally can relate to that and have witnessed that myself, and even with your children. And Sheri, if you can just take a moment to share with us about some of your recruitment efforts so far on behalf of Richmond to try to spread the word about what Virginia has to offer in terms of quality of life, and how some of your conversations have gone with others who might be looking to get out of the New York area or major metropolitan areas.
So because of my work, I'm pretty active in social media, and I know how to do some marketing on social media. So that's where I really pay attention of whether it's posting homes or someone asks a question about quality of life in different areas. Some of it is to get the word out of what it means to live in a community like Richmond, because you really don't want people to use the word small. Then they get nervous. Oh my God, we're not going to have a minion. It's too small. We really want them to understand that a community like ours is intimate and close, that it does span age groups of both children and adults. And that I do readily admit to the downside that in West Orange, I could walk to errands and buy in the morning, decide I'm going to have meatloaf for dinner, and the next day I could decide I'm going to have lamb chops for dinner. But because we're a vital, active community, right? So we get from Baltimore all the time. Occasionally we get from New York. Last summer, earlier, last spring, we had a barbecue truck came down. So the access to food is different from what I'm used to, but adequately meets all our needs. But it is far surpassed by the close friendships we have made among people in the community. And in fact, that's the hardest thing with the stay-at-home orders.
Right.
Is
And that's why we're doing this series.
Right?
It's really important.
Missing people, seeing how they're doing.
Yeah.
Other people's children feel like an extension of my own family.
Right.
But now I don't hear every day how somebody's progressing in their pregnancy, how a kid is doing and learning for their bar mitzvah, how wedding plans are doing. So we miss that.
We all have to try to stay patient, and that's why we're doing this. Asher, I want to ask you just to kind of switch it up a little bit. Now, you're a very deep thinker. You and I have spoken about philosophy, theology. I'm going to put you on the spot. If you're willing to share this story with people. One time you shared a story with me about proving God with your professor. And you had a very interesting academic experience there. And I wonder what that was like, if you could share it with people, about having that conversation with a superior like a professor. And if you could just share that story briefly with our audience, if you're
okay. So I had to take a calculus course in college for the business degree I was seeking. And the professor started teaching calculus, and then he put up a large formula on the board, and try to teach the students how to solve the problem. So many of the students could not get the answers. They could not get to the answers correctly, because there was a certain set of logic that they did not understand. So he decided at that time that he's going to break away from teaching calculus and just teach basic logic. And once you start teaching the basic logic and build it up a little bit, then they'll be able to look at the formula and be able to logic build a stepping stone to solve it. So anyway, this professor was atheist. He set a test for on Yom Kippur. I couldn't take the test. I would not take the test. So he said he's going to give me a 0 because there's no makeup. So I decided, well, I'll go ahead and take the 0, but drop the course when it's time to drop the course before it affects my grade. But he was a very smart mathematician, and I wanted to stick it out. And since I paid for it, I wanted to hear or learn from him how he resolves mathematical problems. So at any rate, what happened was that he went into basic logic in front of the audience, and he went with the logic. He said, like, he started with elementary logic, like 2 is greater than 1, and 3 is greater than 2. Therefore, logic says that 3 is greater than 1. So that's irrefutable. So I'm looking at his logic, and I'm turning it upside down, and I raised my hand, and I asked him, if I can prove to you that 1 is greater than 2, and 1 is greater than 3, and 1 is greater than any number through infinity, would you give me an A in the course? And he looked at me and he said, you're crazy. And so I said, yes, I know I'm crazy. So he said to me, if you don't prove it to me that 1 is greater than all the other numbers, then what I will do, I will give you an F in the course. So I said, okay, what do I have to lose? I'm going to get a 0 if I stick it out anyway, right? So at any rate, so I said, I'll prove it. So I asked him real quick, what creates 2? So he said 1 and 1. I said, fine. What creates 3? 3 ones. What creates a trillion? 1 more than 999 billion, right? So I said, so what's the primary number that creates all these numbers? So he says it's 1. So I said, if 1 creates all the other numbers, so 1 is a primary number, and all the other number that it creates is subordinate numbers. So how could the subordinate numbers be greater than the primary number that creates it? So
Right.
then so I said, I said, this is logic. So I said, okay, so 1 is necessary to create all the numbers. But
Right.
Can 2 create 1? Can 3 create 1? He said, no. Can any other number create 1? He said, no. So I said, 1 has to always exist to create all the other numbers.
Right.
Right?
Okay,
Then I
good.
asked him, well, what about 0? So he said 0 is
A construct.
it's a construct. It's a Greek placeholder for tens, hundreds,
Okay.
thousands, on and on. So, but so what does it imply? So he said it doesn't imply anything. It's nothing.
So tell us, if you don't mind, what grade did you get?
I got an A.
Okay, very good. That's good to the story. So I just want you both to know we're very happy that you've transitioned here to Virginia. It's great to have you in our community, and thank you very much for taking the time. We hope that people will get to know each other through this series because it's hard to connect with one another during the pandemic, and we hope to continue to learn with each other. And really appreciate your time and look forward to seeing you continue in our community with health and happiness, and hope to get together safely in the near future. Thank you both very much.